Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I will make this quick and give more time for Stuart if he needs it. Just kind of informing what I've been focusing on mostly the past week or so is just really working on any sort of potential for CPB funding. So I have upcoming this week a meeting with the CEO of the National Federation of Community Broadcasters, Ms. Sally Kane, to just talk about some of the specifics regarding that grant, and then also had some conversations with Brittany Lee, who's the project coordinator, grants administrator at CPB. And we were really just trying to get information from her regarding eligibility and when compliance needs to be. You know, some people have said, do we apply for the grant and then get in compliance? But she basically said that the application has not even been approved internally from the CPB. Therefore, it has not been released to the public. It will probably be released sometime in mid-April with a due date of late May. But she said that all stations must demonstrate compliance with all criteria at the time of the application. So we're again, I'll be just discussing things further with Sally and with Brittany and creating a spreadsheet of what needs to be, what we need to do, what we have done, and break that down per station. Pretty much all I have to report.
I did want to ask you this. We spoke briefly about the question of the general manager, because that is on our agenda. The GM resigned. You appointed Stuart as an acting or interim general manager, and the question came up about whether you want to go back to the existing pool or we can go ahead and do a new search.
I've discussed that with, I did discuss that with you. I discussed that actually with Lawrence as well, just on the phone casually. He just gave me a call. And I know that this is on the agenda, so we can discuss it further at that point. We do have an existing pool of people that had applied that have already gone through the process, but there are some names that have been given to me of people that would be possibly qualified for the position of GM, and they weren't part of the original search committee. So that does open up a question of, do we pull just from the few people that are remaining from that original search, or do we add these other individuals that have been recommended? So then at that point, we would need a search committee. But again, we can discuss this if it comes to that part of the agenda. I just don't want something to take an exorbitant amount of time or money to move forward. So.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Stuart Landau. I've been with the station for 5 years as chief engineer, long background in broadcasting. I've met a number of you and spoken to many of you on the phone throughout this past period of difficulty. And I've hit the ground running. There's no time to be wasted with what's going on. We sort of met goal on the last fund drive, but it's not sustainable, and we need immediately to get going with some other alternative ways of legally and ethically raising funds. I hope I'm in this position long enough to truly make a difference. I don't feel that I'm a custodian and we can just let things go as they have been. Our product is programming, and we've been without a program director for 15 months. This is ridiculous. We're in a difficult position with a minimal staff. Thank goodness we have data, both as CFO and HR. They've done a terrific job and hopefully continue to do so. Without them, we'd really be in trouble. We need ideas. We need volunteers who will actually do something immediately. And we are looking at, of course, ways of between fund drives and without going on the air to raise funds. And there are some very good possibilities being worked on right now.
I'm the general counsel of Pacifica. I am a producer of a show on WBAI. I have been since 2017, and a show that has featured, my first show featured a young candidate named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I am a union side and employee side labor lawyer for 40 years. Represent some of the most militant unions in New York City. And I became general counsel in 2019 after representing the LSB at WBAI when the station was taken off the air, and winning that case. And then the board asked me if I would be general counsel. So I sort of switched sides immediately after the case was over. And I want people to understand something about the litigation involving the last bylaw vote. And there's a lot of misinformation in the resolution that has come out there. And understand, I am my approach to stuff at Pacifica has been to resolve problems. I got involved in your local negotiations with SAG 2 weeks ago, and I'm glad to say that the staff, within those 2 weeks, we adjusted the agreement. The staff voted to accept it. That year of negotiations is hopefully over if the National SAG Board approves the contract. And the same thing is true with this whole New Day referendum business. We had a vote. We applied the bylaws in a way that I thought was correct, in a way that the National Election Supervisor thought was correct, and in a way that had been agreed between Pacifica and the New Day lawyer, who I had negotiated a whole process with that involved mostly arbitration of various disputes that came up. And they agreed that we would apply the same method that we had applied the year before for the prior bylaw vote, which was that there'd be two classes of voters, and it had to be passed by both classes of voters. It's in writing. Anybody that wants to see it, we can put it up somewhere. I can't put it. I wish I could put it on Zoom right now, but I can't do that. The referendum turned out the way that it did. The listeners voted yes. The staff voted no. The New Day folks said, we're going to sue. I said, you know what? They're going to sue in Alameda. Alameda's never been a friendly place for Pacifica. So we filed the suit basically to resolve the issue. We right or wrong. We filed it in Los Angeles. New Day went into court. What's the first thing they did? Instead of just saying, okay, let's resolve the question, they filed a motion to move the case to Alameda. So we had to spend months litigating that. It wasn't then 4 months later, after that was denied, then they filed a counterclaim seeking basically the same relief that we sought. But the court keeps throwing out their counterclaim. They could just say, listen, judge, let's decide the issue. Was Pacifica's leadership right or wrong? If we were wrong, we'd have to implement the bylaws. If we're right, then we keep going the way that we're going. One of the interesting things that's happened in the interim is you basically have a new ED, Stephanie, who I think you just heard from. You have a new chair of the P&B, Julie Hewitt from Washington, D.C. You have a new vice chair, Beth Van Gutten from your station. So there is new leadership all over Pacifica. And there's a new secretary, new leadership. It's all women. So what's happened with the litigation is Jan Goodman and her husband keep litigating and filing. They file papers, the judge throws it out. They file more papers, the judge throws it out. They file more papers, the judge throws it out. All of that's just dragging this whole thing out. Now, somebody said that it's cost $400,000. That's bullshit. I hope I'm not on the air, right? I know I can't say that on the air. We hired a fairly low cost. First of all, I'm taking the lead in the litigation. I've been admitted by the court to practice in California. The local attorneys who are working with me are a group that works with nonprofits. Maybe the bill has been about $25,000 so far. Otherwise, I do it, and my retainer is is bargain basement rate. I get paid $250 an hour for my work, which is the same thing I was charging 30 years ago to some of the unions I represent. And the whole idea of the litigation is to have a judge look at the law, look at the bylaws, and make a decision. Instead of all this back and forth and counterclaims, and they want damages and they want attorney's fees, just let a court decide it. But that's not the way Jan and her husband Jerry want to handle it. So that's why it's dragged on so long. They want to do it in Alameda. They lost that. I don't know why Jan and Jerry practice in Los Angeles. They wanted to litigate in Alameda. So that's question number one. The second issue that's come up that I saw in your motion was about some candidates that got the list, as we allow every candidate to do. They got.
So just to be clear, that motion, Arthur, that motion is not on the agenda today. It was ruled out of order.
So that's what's going on. And I'm telling you, I have no problem sharing with the bills, to show that the law firm, what they've billed so far, to show what I've billed so far. It hasn't been that expensive. And it could cost zero more if we just said to the judge, decide the issue. And I happen to think that Pacifica leadership is right. I think it's very clear that the bylaws would have impacted the staff class, which I happen to be a member of as a staffer who produces the show, would have affected the staff class differently. And that triggered the bylaw provision, which allows which requires both classes of voters to approve any bylaw change. And that's basically what's going on. And this is not, we're concerned about the fact that the mailing list that New Day developed out of the mailing list we let them use for about 10 months is being used to raise money to sue us. The judge said, well, it's not the same list, so therefore they can do it. That's unfortunate, but so now what's left in the case is, were we right or were we wrong? And if Jerry and Jan, who seem to be the only people really participating in this litigation, would just say, okay, judge, we agree. Give us a decision. Are they right or wrong? It would all be over. And if we're wrong, new people would take leadership in Pacifica. And if we're right, we would just continue doing what we're doing, which over the last number of months has been pretty positive. We've gotten 4 audits done. We've paid down the FJC loan by $160,000. $1.6 million. We sold the Houston property for a nice piece of money. They're about to buy a new property for the station. We're negotiating with CPB about getting that funding back. We have a new ED who is not at all connected to any of the fights of the past, who's a great fundraiser. That was her primary qualification. The foundation is moving forward. And we settled the contract at KPFK without any more, angst. And the idea really from here on, and I've said this to the union folks, Ali, if he's on this call, can tell you, we want to have the staff and Pacifica as a foundation unite, move forward, raise money for KPFK. No more cuts, no more layoffs, no more, attacking. Let's build the stations the way they need to get built. I am one of you, both as a listener and as a producer, and I want you to all to appreciate that. Okay? And I think I'm the first general counsel that doesn't bill everything by the hour. Second, the arbitration agreement had 10 paragraphs. One paragraph is, there shall be the same procedure, the same voting methods used as in the 2019 referendum, which everyone understood meant 2 classes of voters. And then it said, disputes about the process shall be arbitrated. We had unbelievable numbers of arbitration, but when a month before the end, the New Day person said, we want to arbitrate whether there should be two classes of voters. I said, we already agreed on that. We don't have to arbitrate whether there should be. We agreed on that. And they said, if you think I'm wrong, go to court and compel arbitration. They didn't do that. But that's why we didn't do it. We didn't want to arbitrate something that we'd already agreed, had been an express agreement to. The third thing that I recall is on the Turner Goldmacher case, where they sued to have Pacifica put in receivership, and also to get damages out of Grace Aaron and Alex Steinberg in New York for losses suffered by Pacifica. That was dismissed 4 times by a court in Los Angeles, 4 times. And on the 4th one, they said no more, and it's being appealed. And that cost us $100,000. I didn't do that litigation. We had to hire outside attorneys to both represent Pacifica and to represent Grace and Alex. So that cost $100,000, and now that's still being appealed. And the final thing on the 4 candidates, there was a postcard that went out using a list that we let all candidates use, went through a third-party vendor. The postcard was supposed to promote their candidacies, but on one side of the postcard it said, donate money to New Day so they can fight Pacifica on whether or not the referendum passed. We thought, the National Election Supervisor and we agreed, thought that was inappropriate. So we said to those candidates, you have to send out another postcard saying it was wrong for us to do that. That was use of Pacifica's list to raise money for something other than the election. Please send out a postcard that says, donate money to KPFK. That's what we asked. And if you don't do that, you're going to be disqualified. And we were negotiating with Jan Goodman for a month over the language that would go on that postcard. And we actually thought that it was sent out. And then we found out it didn't go out. And so the National Election Supervisor disqualified them, and their votes were not counted. That's why there were 4 people. There were 8 of the 8 candidates on that postcard. 4 of them said, I had no idea this was even going out. But the other 4 didn't say that. And so they were the ones that were disqualified. So I think I answered all the questions. And
Thank you.
I'm going to go get on a plane. And
Sure,
I hope the next time I'm in Los Angeles, I have family there. I was just there, but I was showing my daughter colleges. I can go visit and attend one of your meetings. All right. Thank you very much. And you all do great work. I really, I appreciate it. I'm part of the family.